Hello. I don't like microphones, so we're gonna just go with it. How are you feeling? I mean, this was like a great day, don't you think? Like a lot of awesome, amazing tips and techniques and stories. Oh my God, stories. I love stories. So I'm gonna start with one. I was 4 and really, really cute. And didn't really listen much. And at one point, I had a brother, and he was sick, and I had to be away from my mom and my brother. My dad worked, and I was left alone. I wanted to read, but I couldn't. So I taught myself to read. Don't ask me how, because I don't remember. That was like a very long time ago. But a month later, my brother had to go to the doctor, and I was running in and out of the emergency room. Nobody was watching until I got hit by ambulance car in front of the ambulance. So, I mean, emergency room. So that's my favorite story to tell. Because I don't remember. I remember seeing the tire of the truck on my foot, and I remember my red sock that was like this big. And that's all. That's everything I remember from that. But I was told later, many years later, that was something that started affecting everything about me. And again, emotional release. You know, that guy's amazing. Just, you got to talk to him again. So anyway, story goes, and after that, my grandma died. And then what I remember from my childhood, I got beaten up with the branch from a tree because I fell and I hurt myself and I was crying. So I couldn't cry. So I learned very, very early that crying was not okay. It was not okay. So what do you do when you can't cry? I don't know. You keep going. Keep going to the next thing. So anyway, this cute little girl grows up, runs away from home at 15, because she thinks she's the smartest thing in the world. You know how the story goes. I mean, have you ever met a teenager that actually knows what they're doing? I have 2 right now, and I still don't know what they're doing. But so anyway, I ran away from home. I got married at 16 because I really, really, truly believed that if I get away from my home, I would be better off. And until I got married and I couldn't leave house and got pregnant and then lost the baby because of my husband. And at that point, because I was so young and I was naive and stupid. I mean, I didn't know what life was about. I really didn't. And I don't think anybody really truly does at that age. But we try to do the best we can. Anyway, at that point, all I wanted was to have another baby. That was it. Like, that was my life. I wanted to have another baby. So I did, with the same man who was abusive. So I had a baby on my birthday, on my 18th birthday, which is so amazing because she was born on 3/13 on Friday. Friday. She was the best gift I could ever have. Like, it was amazing. Except there was a war happening in my country at that time. And she was 5-pound, beautiful, beautiful purple baby when she was born. So she had to stay, and I couldn't take her home. And for 2 weeks, I kept going to the hospital, which was, it was next city, like 45 minutes, whatever, something like that. And I would go every day, and I would call 5, 6 times a day. And luckily there was one nurse there that truly cared what was happening to her. And one day when I called, she told me, I'm not a doctor and I can't tell you this, but you've been calling every single day for 2 weeks. She's fine. She's healthy and she's small. She's still very small. She was just over 5 pounds and they would not let her go home. And I knew, like I could hear bombs falling while I was sitting at home. Nothing was happening in my city, but 15 minutes away, there were bombs falling. And I knew I had to go and get her, and whatever happened. I had to take the responsibility for another life that, the doctors will tell you, you cannot do that because blah, blah, blah. But I did. I had this need and instinct that I had to go and get her from the hospital. 2 weeks later, it was Friday again, and I went, and for 2 hours, he would not let me take her. He would not. And eventually I signed up all the papers and I took her against medical care. If I didn't do that, I would have never seen her, because the next day, all the roads were blocked and the bridge was down, and I wouldn't have been able to actually get to the city and get her. So once again, she was the best gift that I could ever have. And then this 18-year-old mom who had no clue what that actually meant made her bed and kept sleeping in it. I left country when she was 2 weeks old, and I'm sure you all love your home city. I mean, I still do. I miss it. I miss it every single day. But I left, and things got better, or at least that's what they told us. Things got better, so I went back home. 7 days later, I had to leave again. And this time, I remember how amazing some people actually are. I was sitting in a ditch, holding her in my arms, and we had to wait to cross the river to get to the next country. So I waited, and this old lady came, and she said, why don't you just come in a house and, feed the baby, change her butt, whatever you need. And I couldn't accept that, because there were hundreds of people there waiting to cross that river, and I didn't think I was anything more special than anyone else that was there. We all had to leave. We all had to leave our country. We all had to leave our city and all the things that we ever had. But I was grateful. I had my baby. That's what I wanted. I wanted a child. So I had my baby and I left. 3 months later, I went back home, because again, things got a little better, and where are you gonna go? You wanna go home. You wanna go to people that you know. So I did. I went back home. I had to leave 3 days later. And this time, they put us on a train and they sent us away. And we had no idea. We had no idea where we were going. Nobody told us anything. But there was a full train of refugees. So we left. We ended up in a different country. And once again, I was in a room living with 14 other people and kids. But I was grateful. I was alive. I had my baby. I didn't know where my dad was. I didn't know. My mom was with me though. I didn't know where my husband was. I have to say, even though he was very abusive, I still needed to know if he was okay, because I had a baby that needed to know her dad. So anyway, that happened. All those things, happened. I was refugee for a few years. I lived all over Europe, and I came here, and I was so excited. It's like America is is a dream come true for all us Europeans, and until we get here, and then we realize it's all the same. We're all the same. We all have the same stories. We all have same shit that goes on. We're all the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where we live in the world. We're all the same. So again, I was grateful, and I kept going. And then, fast forward many years, I remember walking in my bathroom like I did every day, every single day. I walked in my bathroom, took a shower, did my business, and I was brushing my teeth. And for whatever reason, I actually looked up. I looked up at the mirror, and I didn't know who that was. I mean, I knew that was me, obviously. It's just a mirror. But I didn't know. I did not know who that woman was. I didn't recognize anything. I stared at my eyes for like, I don't know, hour. I just stood there and I looked in a mirror, and I could not see anything that I thought I was in that woman. So what do you do? What do you do when you realize that your whole life you didn't and you couldn't feel the feels? You couldn't feel those things because there were so many things happening all at once. So what did I do? I made this little beautiful little box in my chest, and all those things, all those emotions, all the trauma, all the things went in there, so I can deal with it later when I have time, when I'm not tired, when, I don't know, I live on Mars. I don't know what that was, but that was my coping mechanism. It was, I had to go. I had to keep going. So that was the thing I could do at a time. I put it all in there. And then, you go and you start like seeing things, and you go, I want to go back doing things I did 20 years ago that I stopped because, a husband, a mom, a dad, a kid, something was in a way. So I couldn't be that. I couldn't do that. So I went back. I started writing again. I started reading again. Reading was my escape when I was a kid. I didn't read for like 20 years. I did not read for 20 years. I mean, magazine, a little, thing, of course, but I have not read a book in 20 years. By this time, my daughter's 17, and she gets this Twilight book. It's like, Mom, you have to read this. You have to. It's like the vampires, but they're not really vampires. And she was so excited. And I'm like, okay, give it to me. So I start reading, and I don't know, 2 chapters in, I'm going like, so when does the good part actually like come? I don't, I remember reading books, and they were like fun, and they were good and exciting, and I learned things. And now I'm reading about sparkling vampires who live in Washington, I think. I think they live in Washington. I don't know. So, and she's like, no, Mom, you have to read 3 chapters. After the 3rd one, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see, and you have to read it. I'm like, okay. So I kept reading, and I got to the third chapter, and something happened, and it was not the book. It was not the book. But I remembered how much I actually enjoyed reading. Something that I didn't have to fix, something that I didn't have to think about. I mean, who has to think about sparkling vampires living in a dark, rainy place? So it was fun. In 4 days, I read 5 books. But you know what that means, right? Every time I went to the bathroom, I took my book with me. Every time I sat to eat, I took my book with me. Everything I did for 4 days, I had a book in my hands. And then I sat there after I was done, and I sat there and I was like, I should read more. So I did. I started reading again, and it was fun. It was fun. But what happened then is that I actually realized my whole life I was in survival mode. My whole life. Everything about my life was just to survive for the next thing, which also meant that I always was on lookout for the next thing. I was always looking, what is the next shitty thing that's gonna happen, and I have to do it. And I had to do it. I had kids. I had 4 kids by this time with the second husband. There was the first one, and then there was the second one. But at that moment, I realized I went through my life trying to ignore all the pain, so I couldn't feel anything. I literally remember sitting and thinking how I don't actually feel. I don't feel anything unless I have pain. And that meant a huge emotional pain, a huge physical pain. I married a narcissist psychopath so I could feel. At that time, I didn't know why I did that. I thought he was just really charming, and he had pretty words, and I was young. And who's gonna want a woman with 2 kids? Come on. He did, so I married him. And then, you learn through your mistakes, hopefully. That's kind of the point, that we actually do learn when something happens. So you learn, and, you start growing, and you start learning more, and you keep going until the next thing, and the next thing, and whatever the next thing is. So I will tell you, I knew if I stayed in that relationship, something really bad was going to happen. And you know what I did? Can anybody guess what I did?
You ran away.
I stayed. I stayed because it was familiar. It was something I knew my whole life. I was nobody. I was nothing. I was cook and maid and, the third thing that happens in a bedroom. But that's all I was. That's all I ever was to anyone. It took me 5 years after that moment when I realized that I was probably going to die if I stayed. It took me 5 years to actually have enough courage to leave. And I didn't leave. I actually kicked him out. But, same thing, really. So, I want to ask you, what do you do when something really bad happens to you? How do you decide what's next? How do you decide how you're going to wake up the next day? I'm sure something bad happened to someone here at some point. I can tell you what I did. I chose to wake up the next day. That's it. I chose to wake up. So maybe the next day would be different. And maybe it would be so different that I would wake up on a new planet. I mean, books are great. You get to read some amazing stories and you get to be there, even for a few hours. You get to escape. But all that really is nothing compared to 2017. Now I have to think because I can't even do the years anymore. Well, no. I almost forgot. 4 years ago, I actually, for the first time, went to a psychiatrist. There were so many things happening in my life, and I was finally like, okay, somebody has to have something to give me so I can fix myself. So I went, I had my original first consultation, and I walked away with 7 diagnoses. And something he said that I could not understand. He said, well, you have these 7 things wrong with you, and you're really well adjusted. And I thought about it, how can you have 7 different major mental diagnoses and be well adjusted? So it didn't make sense to me. So then I just went to therapy, and I realized that I just needed to talk. I needed to tell somebody my story and then leave and then come back and tell another one and another one and another one. And, but this time I actually met someone new and we married, and he's amazing. Some of my friends will tell you I've been talking to him 4 times a day since I've been here. But it took all that pain, all that trauma. It took all that for me to keep going to the next thing, to the next day. Because deep down, I wanted to live. I wanted to have a good life. I wanted to be happy. And I remember everybody would ask me, so what do you want in life? And the first thing, I never had to think about it. The first thing, it would always be, I want to be happy. And then, we all seek happiness. We all look for it somewhere out there. It's never out there. It's never out there. You get to choose that you're going to be happy. That doesn't mean you're going to wake up the next day and be like, I'm happy. I told myself yesterday I'm going to be happy today, so I'm happy. No, it's not like that. But you get to find things that bring you joy, whether it's singing, dancing, screaming, martial arts. That was my thing. I did martial arts my whole life. I did martial arts. That was my escape. Bruce Lee, kids have heroes. All kids have heroes. Mine was Bruce Lee. I remember being 4 and watching movies with Bruce Lee, I want to be just like him. He's amazing. Look at all the things he can do with his body. I want to be just like him. To this day, I love finding quotes that I've never read before that he said. He's still my hero. 2 years ago, finally, my life's dream was to go see his grave. That was it. That was my dream. I needed to go see his grave. I don't really know why, but I had to do it. So my husband took me to Seattle. I knew where it was. I actually had the actual pin on the map where his grave was for years. So he took me, and when I got there, I sat on a bench because there's his grave and Brandon, his son's grave, and I sat on a bench and I cried. I cried. I just cried. People came, people left pennies, people talked, people took pictures. I sat on that bench for almost 2 hours, and I cried. And my husband, he sat right next to me, and he waited. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, and he let me be who I was, what I needed to be in that moment. A year later, I was laying in a bed. We were talking, just chatting, really nothing important. I moved, and I felt this pain in my back. I was like, oh, it's just kind of weird, you know? I didn't really do anything, so I don't know what it is. But then 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, you know, it just started getting a little more. So what does Sanela do? She goes and Googles, what does it mean, or what does it feel like when you have cracked rib? So I get information, and then I'm sitting and going, but I didn't do anything. I can't have cracked rib. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't even do my martial arts for like almost a year at that point, because, you know, life. So 3 hours later, my husband was making dinner for kids, and I realized that I had to go to the hospital right there and then. I had a huge pain going through my chest. Like I could feel it in front, I could feel it inside, and I could feel it in back. And I came out in the kitchen and I was like, you gotta take me to the ER. He's like, what? Like right now, I can't breathe. So he took me. Luckily, we lived like literally 7 minutes away. He took me. Within 15 minutes, I was being admitted to the hospital because I had 2 blood clots in my right lung. And one was so big that it was actually killing the tissue, which actually saved my life because I felt the pain. If I didn't feel that pain, and they kept telling me, you know, here's the thing, that it doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't matter who we are. So many times in our life, we can't process what's happening in that moment. They kept saying, you are so lucky. You are so lucky that you got here. You're so lucky that you got here on time. And I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm here, so whatever. They got me in a hospital. They got me hooked up. They gave me like 4 shots in my belly to try to break the blood clot. And then he gave me something in the IV. And he said, so how are you feeling? And I was like, I had to breathe to actually answer that question because I didn't know how I was feeling. So I went like, it still hurts. And then I'm like, I don't care. I didn't care. They gave me Dilaudid. I didn't care. I felt so freaking amazing. I did not care. And like in my head, I'm thinking, I have this pain. I still can't breathe. I still can't take a breath. But I actually don't care. I don't care what's happening. So 3 days later is finally when it hit me what could have been 3 days ago. So I went home with all my 7 kids in the house because, you know, I had 4, my husband had 3, so we have like Brady Bunch. You know? We have a 27-year-old and we have a 4-year-old. Go figure. So I went home. I'm like, okay, that was a wake-up call. I kept going. I kept going my whole life. That was a wake-up call that I had to change something. So it took me another 3 months to figure out what that was. And then I got a call at 11:30 at night from my brother, who never, ever calls me. I see my brother like every couple years. We actually live in the same city, by the way. But he called me at 11:30 at night. And at first instinct, I did not want to answer that. But I did. I looked, I'm like, I did. And he told me my baby cousin killed himself. Okay, he was the only cousin that I actually liked. Okay, let's talk about like shitty year. 2 months later, I had to have 2 surgeries because, was I taking care of myself? Hell no. I had 7 kids to take care of. I had like all these other things that I had to do. So I had my surgeries, whatever. And one day I told my husband, I have to leave this city. I can't stay here. I can't deal with this drama, which I'm not going to go into. It was just family stuff that they all do. We all do. Luckily, he came with me. He didn't actually stay behind. And then I had a shitstorm come right after that. I thought everything was great. I mean, we moved 500 miles away. We didn't have to be with the family. Well, we didn't have to be with one side of the family. We went to the other side of the family. That lasted about 2 weeks. Nobody still talks to me. Well, my mom does, kind of. But anyway, I woke up one day and I couldn't move. I was in so much pain that I actually couldn't move. So I went to the doctor. I did the thing. They did the testing. I told them what was going on. They couldn't find out what was wrong, so they kept poking and doing these muscle testing that hurt like hell. But I did all those like 3 times, whatever. 9 months later, they diagnosed me. I had autoimmune disease and other things, and basically came to the point where they are going to put me on a huge dose of steroids to fix one blood test, one number, one marker in my blood work. Everything else was great, but I had one that wasn't, and they couldn't figure out why. So they wanted to put the Band-Aid. They wanted to fix that. And I wouldn't be so upset about that, but they wanted to give me 4 other medications to prevent side effects of the steroids. And I had to do that for like a year. And I kept going back and forth, like, should I do this? I could not make myself do that, because in my whole body, in my heart, I believed that they were just putting a Band-Aid. Nobody knew what the problem really was, but they wanted to treat that one little number. They wanted to fix the number. So I said no, and I didn't do it. But then, for a year, I spent in bed. I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk. I couldn't play with my little one. I couldn't really do anything. Like, if I got up from my bed and got dressed, which was not a lot of dressing. I was like, t-shirt and like pants. That was it. And I walked to the living room and then laid on a couch. That was a huge success. That was a huge success. It's like, what else do you want? I did my thing. I did what I could. But then one day, I chose that it had to stop, that something had to change. And that day is actually the beginning of all the amazing things that come after. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what pain you go through. It doesn't matter what happens to you. You get to choose what you do next. It's your choice. Nobody can fix you. People can help you, but you have to ask. There's that. I never like to ask. But I chose to wash the dishes. I couldn't stand on my feet, on my legs for more than 2 minutes. I was in excruciating pain. But I chose to do the damn dishes. So I went in the kitchen, I got the chair, and I started. I was so excited. I'm like, I'm gonna do the dishes. 2 minutes into it, my whole body is spazzing. So I sit on a chair And I do another plate and another cup. And then I can't sit anymore. So I stand up. So I can't stand, so I bend over. Took me half an afternoon to do a sink of dishes. It was like lunch dishes. It's not like my whole kitchen was full of dishes. It was one sink of dishes. But I did it. And I felt so amazing and so horrible. Like everything in my body, like give me anything. I don't care. I don't do drugs. Give me drugs. Like I don't even know what kind of drugs, but I don't care. Like in this moment, give me whatever you can find and I will take it because I can't stand the pain. But I did my dishes. I did my dishes. I was so proud. I hate doing dishes, by the way. I mean, I always did my whole life. I still don't like doing dishes. But now I choose to do dishes because I want a clean kitchen. And I can't wait for my kids to do it because it probably won't happen, ever. And I really mean like ever. They will keep using. One time I did. I stopped doing the dishes. And you know what happened? They used up all the dishes in the kitchen. And then they were eating cereal from a plastic Tupperware. Because there were no more dishes. And they didn't want to do it. So I realized I had to do it. But the problem and a solution was that I chose every day. Like with this disease, you have to exercise. But if you exercise just a little too much, you make it worse. So what do? How do you know where that line is? You don't. You really don't. I still don't. I still overdo it. And sometimes I don't do it at all. But, here we are. I chose every day to do something. I chose to exercise. If you say exercise, everybody thinks like at least 30 minutes, right? I mean, you gotta do like at least 30 minutes. I couldn't stand for 2, so that was out of the question. I couldn't do that. So I was like, well, 2 minutes. I can stand for 2 minutes, right? So I can stretch for 2 minutes. That was a big joke. I couldn't. But then I thought to myself, well, what if I do 30 seconds? What if I just do what I can in that moment? So I did. Sometimes it was literally 2 stretches. I would move my arm and it's like, okay, that's it. I'm done. But in my mind, there was this hope that if I keep doing one little thing, just one, it was no big thing. I didn't do a big change. It was one little thing. But I kept doing one little thing every little day. It was a little day because I slept a lot. But I chose to change something every day and to get better at something every day. There was this woman who was martial arts badass. I was badass. That's why I wear these boots, because they make me feel badass. And everybody told me that this was my new normal. Being in bed, not being able to walk, not being able to do anything, not being able to go to the park with the kids. This was my new normal, and I could not accept that. And I remember November 15th, 2018. I woke up in the morning, my husband made us coffee, and I was sitting there and I was like, that's it. And he was like, what's it? I'm like, that's it. I'm changing my life today. I'm starting new. And I wish I could think ahead of time and videotape his face when I said that. Because there was this pain and this fear and this excitement. I could see all of it on his face, all at once. I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not gonna eat any grains. I'm not gonna eat any dairy, and I'm not gonna eat any sugar. Because for a year being in bed, I did a lot of research because that's what I could do. I could read. So I read and I listened to audiobooks and I watched YouTube. So I did all the research for a year, and that was my solution. I'm going to stop eating these things and see what happens. It was never like I'm going to cure the disease or I'm going to be in martial arts and I'm going to go and, do the amazing things. It was, I'm going to do everything I can right now, today, to make myself feel better. That was it. I wanted to feel better. So that's what I did. 3.5 months later, I went to the doctor. I felt actually better. I felt better, like every day. And everybody's like, well, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's in my head. Maybe I'm telling myself that I feel good, so I feel good. But I didn't care because I actually felt better. So it didn't matter how I got there. I kept doing it. 30 seconds of this, 2 minutes of that, came to like half an hour a year later, But I got there. But 3.5 months later, I went to the doctor and they did all the blood work, all the muscle testing, and there was nothing there. There was nothing there. Now, everybody can do this. I'm not special. I'm not. I'm not any better than any of you here. All it takes is a decision on your part to change something. And then you do it. And you keep doing it. And you keep falling on your face. And you keep getting up. And every time you fall down, you tell yourself, that's nothing. It's just a scratch. Get up and do your thing the next day. Some days I went to bed at 4 p.m. Some nights I didn't sleep at all. But I made that choice that I was going to do everything that I possibly can to feel better, just to feel better. There was no intention on healing disease. There was no intention on, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I did in 3.5 months. I did actually. And I felt great, but that was not the intention. The only intention I had was, I have to try. Because if I don't try, nobody is going to do it for me. Nobody can. I'm telling you, people can help you. Friends can be there for you. You can have support. You can have amazing support. My friend Jody, she's here. She's going to talk next. Just wait. Just wait for that one. But you get to choose how your day is going to go. So I want to tell you, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Now let me say that again. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. And you get to choose where you're going to go with that. And if there's only one thing I want you to remember, is you are going to die. You are going to die. But you get to live the way you want to. So go out there, get your badass boots, get some cool fucking shades, put them on, and go be you. Do that one thing, that one little thing. It's not about big things. It's never about big things. It's that one little thing that will change something, that will get you to the next little thing, to the next little thing, to the next little thing. And then one day, you're going to have everything that you ever wanted in life. But today is the first day of the rest of your life. And you get to choose how you're going to live that life. Thank you for listening.